Today I'll be answering a question several of y'all raised following my analysis of Rafa and Del Potro's semifinal match at the US Open and the final between Federer and Delpo. In my analysis of the Rafa-Del Potro match, I said that Rafa, and we're going to pretend that Rafa's down here. Remember, the icon circles the player, stick is the side of the body the player's hitting on. This is a forehand for a righty. This is a forehand for Rafa. What I said was that Rafa was hitting a lot of balls short and in the middle of the tennis court, and Del Potro was going to town with those shots because Rafa's got a lot of topspin. Ball kicks up. That's right into Delpo's wheelhouse because Delpo is about 6'6", 6'7". But then what I said was Federer was also hitting down the middle of the court. Now we'll pretend this is Federer. And that was an effective strategy against Del Potro. That was pushing him back, and that was preventing him from attacking. So what's the difference there? Why did Federer execute that strategy successfully in the first set and a half and then Rafa got completely victimized by it? He was sitting down the middle of the court, and he was getting run all over the place. Well, I already kind of got at the answer, and it has to do with the type of balls that both these players hit. Let's start with Rafa. Rafa, heavy topspin, doesn't hit the ball particularly deep. He certainly can, but he's not going to push you back with his forehand. The strength of his forehand is that it kicks up real high, and he can create incredible angles. So what Rafa likes to do is hook that thing off the court and pull his opponents off the court. Well, when Rafa puts that thing down the middle of the court, right here, again, landing at the service line, and it kicks up, and it's not a forehand that really penetrates the court. He's not going to push you back with that shot. So the ball was kicking up, and Del Potro had time to prepare, so he would set up, and then he would hit a forehand or a backhand into one of the two corners, and he would be in control of that point, and Rafa couldn't get his forehand out of this zone most of the time, so Del Potro didn't really have to move too much. And again, the key is that he was stepping in and he could be aggressive with those balls. Well, Federer, he doesn't hit a heavy looping topspin ball. He certainly can, but his ball is a little bit flatter, tends to land a little bit deeper, and it's got more pace. It penetrates the court better. So it would land somewhere in here. And Del Potro couldn't step into this ball. The ball, like I said, was flatter, so it would push him back a little bit. He didn't have as much time to prepare, and instead of stepping into the court to attack the ball, many times he was either backpedaling or he was in a neutral position in terms of which way his momentum was moving. He wasn't moving into the court, he might have been backpedaling, or he might have just been set, but in any event, he could not attack those balls. And keep in mind that because Federer's balls are lower, they don't kick up as high, well, Del Potro couldn't rip the ball as hard because he'd be worried about missing that shot. He had to put more topspin on it to pull it over the net and then back down into the court. So the type of ball that those two guys are hitting heavily influenced whether Del Potro could attack the ball or not. And that's why a strategy that might work great for one player isn't necessarily going to work for another player, just purely based on how they hit the tennis ball. Now let me take a moment to expand on this issue of time that I mentioned briefly before. Del Potro has more time to prepare for Rafa's ball. Now why? It travels higher over the net, has more topspin, not hit as hard. Well, that's part of it. But it also has to do with where Federer versus Nadal position themselves on the tennis court. Nadal is going to position himself a little bit further back. So let's say that this mark I just drew right here is 10 feet from the baseline. Well, if Nadal is hitting the ball back here, the ball has to travel 10 feet to get to him, and then it has to travel 10 feet to get back to the baseline. So on aggregate, if Del Potro hits it and then Nadal hits it back, this ball travels an additional 20 feet past the baseline. But Federer, as many of you know, plays pretty much on the baseline or a couple steps back. So this extra 20 feet or so is eliminated, and the ball is in fact traveling 20 feet less than it would be under this hypothetical situation that I have just constructed. So What that means is because Nadal plays further back, the ball takes longer to get to him, and it takes longer to get back over to Del Potro, and that gives Del Potro more time to set up. One of Federer's strengths is that he's right on the baseline, takes the ball early, cuts down on his opponent's amount of time, the amount of time they have to prepare. This is something that Andre Agassi was famous for. He'd stand right on the baseline and he would run his opponent from side to side and take away all their time. And if you're talented enough to pick that ball up on the rise, then that's a great strategy because, again, your opponent simply doesn't have as much time to move out, hit, and then recover as they would if you're playing further behind the baseline. So that was another reason that Del Potro could not attack Federer's ball. There was just less time, and again, part of it's based on just how Federer hits the ball, less spin, flatter ball, but it's also based on where on the court, his actual positioning. That's going to cut down on the amount of time as well.